What we done started. Look at what we done started. This the people party.
What's up, party people? This is Talib Kweli, the BKMC. How you doing? This is another wonderful episode of the world's best podcast. And I'll take the Pepsi challenge with any of those podcasts out there, the People's Party. Give it up for my lovely and talented and always thought-provoking and funny and hilarious co-host, the best co-host in the game, Jasmin Leigh. What's up, Jasmin?
I never get tired of hearing that. I am doing amazing. In and out Black History Month the right way.
That's right. Well, I never get tired of seeing you, and I'm glad that we still get to connect and do these shows together and talk to some of my favorite people.
Yes.
And talk to some of my friends and talk to icons of the culture, like this gentleman that we have on here today. Now, you see I wore my Mets hat today because when I think of New York, and I think of Queens, New York, This is the symbol I think of when I think of Queens, New York. Now, this is my brother right here. This is like my real brother right here because we were on the same label together back in the day, Rawkus. We collaborated and toured together. We got so many jams together. And like many people who are hip-hop fans, I have truly been astounded by his lyrical, the way he breaks shit down, the way he dissects shit lyrically. It's not just his flow, but it's the ideas he explores and the approaches that he takes. One song he might be rhyming from the perspective of a bullet. Another song he might be having a battle in a dream. And his newest project, he takes the perspective of a racist. We're going to talk about his group, Organized Konfusion, but I have to say that his first project, solo project, Internal Affairs, that was on Rawkus, the same time I was on Rawkus, changed the game. Is a beautifully done album. After that, he came with Desire and War, We Are Renegades, PTSD, Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, where he talks about depression in a very real way, came out after that. And now we got the 13 project. Him and his band just dropped A Beautiful Day for an Exorcism. It just came out this last January. And I want to quote what one of the greatest MCs of all time has said about this man, Kool Moe Dee. Kool Moe Dee in the book, There's a God on the Mic, said Pharoahe Monch is like an eloquent linguistics professor moonlighting as a rhyme serial killer terrorist, challenging the listener's IQ while daring him or her to keep up. Those are powerful words. That's high praise from a great MC. We are talking about a legend. Pharoahe Monch is in the house. What's up, Pharoahe Monch? How you doing?
Peace.
Welcome.
Peace. I appreciate the Mets hat. I appreciate the Mets hat first and foremost.
No doubt.
Let's go Mets. But
Let's go Mets.
That's high praise from Moe Dee, man. I remember he wrote that book. So yeah, man, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, man. Shout out to Kool Moe Dee. He, none of us would be doing it if it wasn't for Kool Moe Dee. I want to start by asking you this. On the intro of Internal Affairs, you say, I have a dream one day we'll get to the promised land, then the president will be me. The government will be Shabam, Mos, and Kweli.
Yes.
I want to thank you for shouting me out on the first song on your album because you were already such a huge influence on me and I was hugely inspired by you. But what made you want to include myself, Mos, and Shabam on that song, on the intro of such an important album?
I felt at the time, what we were doing there was pushing the culture forward. And, that's always the goal, culturally, and why I got into the business as an MC. And I loved what was going on there at the time. So, it was just my way of saying, like, after these cats or with these cats, I'm appointing them into this new government that's going to oversee that, these bars are done right and this culture is pushed forward properly.
Right.
Nothing more than that.
No doubt. I appreciate it.
A lot of good things come out of Jamaica Queens. You got shopping, shush kebabs, LL Cool J, 50 Cent, Nas, and you were raised in South Jamaica Queens. And as I just said, the rap lineage is incredible. Within New York rap ecosystem, can you identify a specific Queen style or a specific Jamaica Queen style?
I mean, I think it's a plethora of different flows and styles that come out of there. Like I said, culturally, for me, it was the park jams and Grandmaster Vic and the Boss Crew, and like the early stages of people just bringing the equipment out, hearing it, you know, just taking it back to those MCs and Mikey D and Johnny Quest. And these are cats who used to turn up, you know, in the park. And like Nas was saying, like in those moments, I would literally be too afraid, even though I was contemplating. And me and Prince Paul was working on our craft. I would literally be too nervous to approach that mic and that stage at that time. And I think to work up and to go in the basement and work on your craft and try and elevate to that level is where I could first hear, like, I wasn't good enough yet, you know. I thought it was awesome that I could make a tape, listen to it, and before I would play it for somebody else, be able to say to myself, this is bullshit. It's not good enough yet. You need to work on your craft just to kind of sound like those dudes, you know, and get it up to that level.
One thing I truly appreciate about you as an artist is I put you on the top tier of technically proficient MCs. I put you on the top tier of, like, when I think of what I'm trying to do stylistically and lyrically, I think of Pharoahe Monch. And there's not a lot of people, it's very rare air that you're breathing. But as lyrical as you get, as many syllables as you use, as technically dope you are, you're a wizard with the technique. You always understand how to keep it eye level, and you always understand how to talk about what people are actually experiencing in these neighborhoods and what people are actually going through. And you know when it's time to keep it simple. From a Simon Says to when you say, I'm the $6 million motherfucking dollar man with a $6 million motherfucking dollar plan, you know when it's time to just on the beat be like, okay.
Right.
And since we were talking about Queens, one of my favorite songs, I mean, I got a lot of songs that I like by you, but one of my absolute favorites is Queens. And the pictures you paint and the way in which you do it. I know this nigga named Donovan, astonishing the way he used to handle the pill guy. I could see that. You know what I'm saying? When you're like, that night, Rockin' Nikes, that night, Rockin' Nikes, he and Mike and Nikes slap boxing with a dyke on a bike too small. I could see that. I've seen somebody slap boxing with a dyke on a bike too small.
Oh my God.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you live in the hood, you don't, and I don't mean to be politically incorrect and use the word, but if you live in the hood, that's what you've seen. You know what I'm saying? Like, that you've seen that. So I just want to say, man, first of all, I want to give you props for that song. Tell me about how just Queens shaped you as an artist.
All that shit is real, man, and I'm a sponge. So, you know, just having conversation, looking around the neighborhood, watching films, you're trying to absorb all of that into the songwriting, especially on the Queens record. You know, I don't know if it was a Queens thing. I'm pretty sure it was a Brooklyn thing as well. It would be like these cats and kids like on these little ass bikes. I'm like, dude, like, get a proper sized bike and shit.
Yeah, your bike is too small.
And it's just hood shit, you know, and like, the stray dog shit back in the day. So I was just trying to paint that picture for people of what it was like just being on the block and being in the hood. And that story is loosely about a kid I used to play basketball with who was crazy nice and, just an overall good dude. I found out one summer he got murdered. And, he was one of those cats that could have made it to the league if he applied himself. And so, I felt it only right, to like adapt that story and kind of make it into a Queens thing because it felt so Queens. All these cats that I grew up with and went to school with that could have made it into the league, to the NBA, but didn't for various reasons. So that's kind of a look into the story as well. You know what I mean? In terms of the songwriting, he was saying, I piggybacked off of y'all cats as well by the time I got to Rawkus in terms of listening to song arrangement and writing as well. When you're a solo artist, it's like you have to kind of switch up the pitches and tonality and tones and everything to keep it interesting because you're listening to a song, you almost want to take on a different personality on a verse here, or just make a verse interesting. So that's definitely what I was trying to do on Internal Affairs, because it was my first solo album, and I knew I had to try to keep it interesting all the way through.
I don't think that it's just a Queens or Brooklyn thing, because I'm from Roosevelt and we definitely saw niggas riding on bikes that they clearly stole from their little sisters. Some of them will be pink and little, like, what are you doing with this little ass bike?
Exactly.
Now, Pharoahe, growing up, you definitely look like a Monchhichis. Is that definitely where the name came? That's where the name came from?
Well, I mean, it's a bunch of crazy stages. By the time I was a class clown, you know, I got kicked out of junior high school a couple of times clowning around. But by the time I got to high school, it got a little ridiculous. You know, I was like the kid cracking on everybody, and you know, that's just what it was. You know, I was mad outgoing in high school, and it shifted. I'm kind of way more humble now. But anyway, I used to crack on this one particular chick in the class and lean into her, you know, pretty heavy. And one summer, I got a haircut, and the barber just fucked up my line completely, made the shit into a circle. And I wore a hat in school. The teacher was like, yo, you know, what are you doing? Take the hat off. So I had to take the hat off. It was embarrassing. She turned around. She said, this motherfucker look like a Monchhichis. She started singing the song.
We showing our age with this one. They don't know
laughing.
What that is, Pharoahe.
I had to look up what a Monchhichis
Teachers laughing.
Was.
Yeah. But everybody's laughing. So I just embraced the shit, you know, because that's what we did anyway. And I was like, all right, you know, I'll rock with it. And I kept the Monch, you know.
You made it into a superhero name. This is like your superhero origin story. I've heard you once say, and this is for the real hip hop fans right here, no Paul C, no Organized. No Organized, no Pharoahe. Paul C died at 24 just as he was rising to fame. Tell us about who Paul C was, what you remember about working with him, and how he's inspired you in your career.
I mean, you know, first off, you know, you go back to that era, you talk about somebody who's working with Rakim and Ultra Mag and Super Lover C and all the like popular joints that's on the radio that's just hard, you know, lyrical and just hard beats and rhymes and boom bap. And so as we were transitioning, you know, into going in the studio and knocking out our own songs as Organized, we went to the famous 1212. And we went in there dead set to just, you know, learn and start working on a demo. And Paul C walked in on one of the sessions, heard something we were doing, fell in love with the group, and, you know, gave us a call, like, hit us up. I couldn't believe it was him. He was like, I would love to work with you guys. And he was like the dude who first like beat me into shape. You know, I came to the session to do a song and the bars were too long. Like I didn't even know how to count bars properly at that time. And you know, he stopped the session and was like, get out, go home, learn how to count bars, listen to your favorite, you know, rap group and really get these arrangements together. And he brought structure, you know, in a way to the group where we were trying to be loose and have fun with it and go past the measures. He brought a lot of structure to it, as well as the ill production. And he worked on a demo for, we were STP, Simply Too Positive back then. That was taken to Bobito and then Russell at Def Jams. And so he gave us our push and our start and started shaping us. And, you know, and through all that, it's not even necessary to mention that he was white because it was just so much soul. And we were just searching for people, I think, in that era who just loved the culture and hip hop the way that we did. You would gravitate to anyone who fucked with it like that. I mean, passionate about it. And so, that summer, you know, that we were shopping a demo, he got murdered. And it just kind of sucked the life out of me and the group as well. And we were like thrown into a frenzy as to what to do with our careers moving forward because, you know, he was going to produce the whole album, which is kind of why that first album, in my opinion, sounds experimental. because we were kind of thrown into like going into the studio with records and kind of putting things together without like all the pre-production that he had embedded in what we were doing. But yeah, Paul was also an incredible human being as well. You know, we hung out. He taught me like, you know, have fun with it as well. You know, let's leave the studio, come back and, you know, start working again. And those moments taught me how to enjoy the process, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, rest in peace, Paul C. And what you just said that you learned from him, that's such an important lesson that some people don't ever learn. And that's really how you get to it. But it's also, I feel like he still guided y'all because even though it was experimental and, you know, records like Hypnotical Gases and certain chances y'all were taking on those records, you know, it was meant to happen that way. I mean, everything that was meant to happen is exactly what happens. And I feel like even with you feeling like that was a response to not having Paul C there, it's still his presence in your life challenged you and made y'all step up in a certain way.
Exactly. Definitely. We definitely had a spirit, you know, with us thinking about, you know, what would he do and what would he say about, you know, these ideas we had. And his tutelage was there and, you know, his imprint was there with the engineers as well as we moved forward and was being experimental on the things we were doing. So I agree 100%. And to this day, you know, if I'm working on a beat or a production or making some type of musical choice, you know, I could still, you know, utilize that spirit and that voice to say, you know, or to hear say, you should do this or what we do, or you should do it this way. So you use all of those things as you move along in your career anyway. So you're absolutely right.
In the book, How to Rap, you talked about the influence of Coltrane and the idea of using your voice as an instrument when it comes to flow and delivery. What does that look like on a practical level?
You know, I came in the game, I'm chronic asthmatic, and I kind of saw it as a gift and a curse anyway. I would listen to Coltrane and those long riffs and flows that he would do and think about his breath control and his lung capacity and how he was able to, you know, push through those notes and those songs that way. I would always be amazed by. And so when I became an MC, I thought I would try to challenge myself to do these long-winded runs as well and notations as well, like he did, in order to kind of defeat my issue with my lung disease. So, you know, he was the one, and the asthma was the thing too that kind of shaped the way I started rhyming. I wanted to rhyme like someone who you would never think would have asthma. And when I listened to him play, it always blew me away how long he could hold a note and how long he could do these amazing runs and patterns that he would do.
Wow, that's really hugely inspirational to me because I am privileged to not have asthma and to not have those issues, but I was affected by Coltrane in the very same way and for slightly different reasons. I guess, yeah, for the same reasons. The way I look at the way I write my flow is definitely influenced heavily by Coltrane. And that's one of the reasons why I think you're one of my favorite MCs, because we always we connect on that level. And I also want to big you up for the record Still Standing with Jill Scott. I think that record is a slept-on record. On Spit Kicker Tour, I watched you struggle with asthma and still have to deliver for the people. And, you know, it was very inspirational to watch you do that and watch the process. And you kind of describe it on Still Standing, and I appreciate that song so much. And then you also, on Still Standing, juxtapose your issues with asthma into talking about systemic oppression. And you mentioned the police squeeze. And I think that's beautiful and brilliant of you, brother. I want to thank you for sharing that part of yourself in that way.
Absolutely, man. You know, I just, you know, you want to give of yourself, something that we learned in the culture of hip hop. When you look at, Tupac, and you look at other great artists who shared these kind of internal things with their audience as well. So, you know, you grow as an artist, and you learn that you have to be open, and you have to, you know, share the good times and bad times to kind of get a relationship and have people relate to you in a real way. So I've always wanted to implement those things into my story, because, you know, I'm usually metaphoring a bullet or unborn child, right. Or, you know, it just became the point where it was like, well, who's Pharaoh? Who's Troy Jameson? You know, and I started to feel a need to let people know me personally, and, you know, as a person in the songs, you know.
Yeah, word up. I'm also blessed to be on The Truth with you, where you start talking about yourself. Troy Donald Jameson is how you rhyming in that record, and it's amazing. It's amazing for me to be a part of that record, and for my trajectory to come into contact with yours, because I remember the first time I saw the Fudge Pudge video on Video Music Box, and the Fudge Pudge sample, boom, 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 boom. Is that the same sample as a Funky Phil one, Cypress Hill?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
also,
I mean,
Showbiz and AG, yeah.
Yeah, like that sort of bass line was just, it meant so much to hip hop at that time. But I mean, I'll be honest with you, y'all version of that loop is my favorite version. On the first record, I thought it was brave and loyal and respectful for the first time I'm hearing of Organized Konfusion, y'all like, yeah, what we doing is cool. Check out this OC dude though. You know what I'm saying? Because that's how it felt. And it's like, damn, I'm just now getting to know these dudes, and they already introducing me to their mans. But I didn't understand at that time the connection between y'all and OC, and the whole connection between you and Diamond D. You've done a lot of work with Diamond D, and you ran around with Big L and them, and you've been associated with Diggin in the Crates. And I don't think people understand that connection. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, OC lived across the street from me at the time, and we used to just be human, like playing basketball, playing football. And he came to us and he was like, yo, I spit. And just like, you know, we were, you know, doing demos, and just like everybody else at the time, you're like, whatever, nigga, you know. And then he rapped, and I was just, you know, fucking floored. Like, it wasn't like, oh, you could rap. Like when he spit for us, I was like, yo, this is like, it's a special shit. Like, this dude is special. Like, you need a record deal. Also, the first time I heard him rhyme, again, just pocket and tone shit. But I think for me, as well as Prince, the reason why we felt it necessary is he pushed us. You know, he would be like, yo, I wrote something new. And I would go back and be like, I wrote something new. And I've always appreciated that in terms of like, again, raising the bar in terms of having someone to bounce things off of. So I felt it only right that he'd be on the song Prince as well. And look at that, man. You're right. Like, look at where his career went after that.
Yeah.
Took off, and he had a classic album after that. And you know, O, you know, joined D.I.T.C. So that's my affiliation with them through O. We toured, I met Buck Wild on the first tour we went on with Finesse. Finesse had brought Buck Wild on the tour, and that's how O and Buck hooked up. And then Buck wound up doing Stress record, the single, and a bunch of the joints, 13 record for our up and coming album. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that album a lot. That first Organized Konfusion album. It's such a fantastic album. It was on the label Hollywood Basic, which is owned by Disney. And on Fudge Pudge, y'all, you say, plus I'm down with Mickey Mouse. You know what I'm saying? Now, y'all obviously were letting the audience know, oh, we know that we associate with Disney. Like, we know that that's a thing that y'all gonna think about when you think about this group. But we're just gonna be like blunt and upfront with it. Like, what was that like being what essentially was an underground hip hop group in an era where underground hip hop groups weren't even being marketed properly at all, ever, signed to what essentially was Disney at that time?
It was crazy. So after the Barbito shopping at a demo to Russell, he passed on it. He passed on us and Nas. But he came back around. We saw him in the club, me and Prince, and he approached us. And he was like, all right, I've been listening to this demo. I might give you guys a shot. Got a, meeting with him, was in a phone conference with him. And he was like, we were still Simply Too Positive. And he was like, yo, I'll fuck with y'all, but this name is the worst fucking name in hip hop ever. What the fuck is a Simply Too Positive? And we tried to justify the shit like, STP, like the oil. He was like, it's still fucking stupid, So he's responsible for us changing the name to Organized Konfusion. Wow. Which I give him props for, because he was like, you got to change the name. So we went and we changed the name to just come up with something ill, crazy.
Organized Konfusion is one of the best names of hip hop, group names of hip hop, so I must say.
Yeah, thank you. And so, like I said, through that, we went into the Stress album, met Buck Wild, met Lord Finesse, and that's kind of how that association happened with the DITC crew,
Now, one of the funniest things that ever happened to me at an in-store revolves around you. I was at in-store. There's a record store, I think something called Something Comic, Newberry Comics, I think, in Boston. I might have got that wrong, but there's a record store in Boston. And I was doing an in-store, and a kid comes up to me, and he was like, man, I'm so glad that you don't rap about sex. which is actually incorrect. That's actually untrue, but I let him keep talking, right? And he was like, so glad you don't rap about sex. Man, I just heard this Pharoahe Monch song, and Pharoahe Monch is my favorite MC, and he just be rapping about sex and pornography and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm looking at this dude, right? I'm looking at this dude, and I'm like, Fudge, I'm thinking about Fudge Pudge. I'm like, this nigga was rapping about Heather Hunter on Fudge Pudge. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, Pharoahe Monch has always told you from the beginning who he is. He's always told you about all of his interests, right? So I just want to give you a chance to talk about being an MC, right, who is known for being spiritual, right? He's known for being spiritual and lyrical, but you're not scared to rap about sex. Or you're not scared to say, girls, grab on your titties. And do you ever get pushback from fans who want you to always be super conscious all the time?
I felt it very necessary to let people know from a very early point that I wanted to be an artist and explore all of those things. And again, by the time I got to Rawkus, I was watching you guys and, doing interviews with you and Most. And I remember one time Most was asked about, we were on a panel at the Black Caucus meeting in Washington. And we were on a panel, and this woman addressed me and Most, and she said, she stood up and she said, what are you doing specifically for young Black women in the community right at this moment? And Most raised his hand, and he was like, absolutely nothing. Right now, I'm on the panel, and then I'm gonna make a record, and then I'm an artist, and I want to be an artist. But he challenged her in saying that we try to appoint, artists in these positions sometimes, out of positions when we really have really qualified, thinkers and people or professionals to put in these areas, and we try to push artists in these areas too. We all know that Most is enlightening and spiritual and has done so much for the community and upliftment through his music. But at the same time, he was like, I'm an artist first, and I want to be able to move in this space and move in this space as well. And I thought that was interesting. I think first and foremost now, me as an artist, I want to add to the planet. I want to add to inspiration. I want people to be inspired by what I leave behind. I also feel innate about, getting deep into the aspect of these different movements. And sometimes I get stuck in terms of what to do in a certain situation. I'll reach out to you and be like, yo, what's going on in this city? Or we've actually been in St. Louis actively working on different situations. But as an artist, I definitely want the full spectrum to be able to write from the perspectives that I want to write from and create how I want to create. And I thought from the beginning of my career, I was constantly pushing for that. I saw people boxing lyricism in and boxing the culture in, like, you know, if you're not real, or if you haven't done this bit or you haven't done that, then your music is not as valid as this artist who may be a nerd or whatever. So even when I was in high school, I was like, that's so bullshit. Like, what if the dude from prison is just whack and he can't fucking rap at all? Like, you gonna fucking support that anyway? Right. So, you know, it's about being the best artist possible. But my heart definitely lies in upliftment and the betterment of Black people and people in general on the planet in general.
Yes.
Word.
And you said two things that stood up. Number one, you can do multiple things. You can talk about sex and you can talk about conscious rap. It doesn't have to be either or. And secondly, because we talk about this on the show a lot, that to stop looking at artists for things that activists are doing. So it's not like people have to find different role models for different things, I feel.
Yeah, I agree.
Exactly. And you know, if it's innate in you and you want to participate, I mean, I feel I do it in my music, but I reach out to the proper channels, you know, to you know, when I feel like I'm not doing enough and I feel like I want to get involved more than just a song, because, you know, making songs about the situation gets tired too, and sometimes you need to physically be present and to do more. People say, you know, I make these police brutality joints. I saw a guy online one time say, you know, this shit's redundant. And I'm like, so is the fucking issue. You know, when the issue is over, I'll stop making records about the shit.
Every rap fan understands how complicated, not even just rap fans, just in general, how complicated group dynamics can be. But even when something doesn't work, it doesn't mean that any love is lost. So I want to give you the chance to give Prince Poetry his flowers and talk about what he brought to Organized Konfusion.
Oh, man, I mean, that would be everything. We recently did a 20th anniversary for Internal Affairs at the Kennedy Center, and I brought out Diamond D and Scratch and Prince Poe, and me and Prince Poe have a record on that album. At the show, I was just saying how my existence in the music industry wouldn't be. I saw it from a sports perspective on some team shit always. And so we got together and we worked on it. And I just didn't have the wherewithal to be a solo artist at the time, and learn through me and his connection, and learn through how to work out these songs and collaborate on different things from him. He had the chutzpah, the balls back then to push, and the energy and the wherewithal to organize, no pun intended, the group and push it forward and do the runs and deliver the demos and work on the songs and do a lot of the work on that end of the spectrum, as well as an incredible lyricist who
yes,
just was there with me when we would make those records and, you know, push the envelope on some of those songs. So everything, you know? Yeah.
Do you ever think we'll see another Organized Konfusion album?
You know, I think about it, but I ask myself, and I talk to him about it as well, in the sense of album, you know, what does it mean now? So we're talking about doing some music because we're releasing, you know, the Stress album and the first album for the first time digitally this year. And I wanted to do something extra special for that as well. So we're looking forward to doing that. In terms of full body, you know, I think we both have a level that we need to be at. Like, those albums took 3 years in between, you know, to make. So, you know, I think about just getting into that space And, you know, right now I'm like, yo, let's make some fucking records, you know, before we think about,
Word up. Well, shout out to Organized Konfusion, one of the greatest lyrical inspirations for me, which y'all did on that first album and then the next two, but particularly on that first album, pushed me as a lyricist in amazing ways. One of the greatest lyrics I've ever heard from any rapper, ever, is when you said, I do a rock and I ran because I couldn't stand anymore within the grips of the man. So who asked me who's sane? Because the hypnotical gases are eating my brain. That song, Hypnotical Gases, is very, very lyrical. And then you reuse those lyrics again on Agent Orange. And I bring Agent Orange up again because I want to talk about the 13 project. And you and me had a discussion last night. And, you know, you asked me what I thought about the album. We talked about it. And I talked about certain records through your career that made me feel like you were building towards this album. And Agent Orange is one of those records. And your eyes lit up. And you said, yes, Agent Orange, like that's the record, you know? So tell me why you feel this way about this record, because I feel the same way.
The record doesn't lose any hip hop temperament at all. Shout out to Sarah, Shafiq, and shout out to Omas, Taz. I think Shafiq is one of the illest beat programmers in the history of the game. So it had that knock to it, and it had that kind of the late Dilla timing to it that I was loving at the time so much that Jared was like, yo, it may be too slightly off. Can we like shift it back a little bit? It was way like slop when I first got the beat. We shifted it back a little bit, but it was dark and it was rock influenced, but it still had knock to it. And that's kind of what I always wanted to hear coming from, you know, listening to those records and thinking about adding rock elements into it. I just never wanted to lose the hip hop. And this was like the perfect beat for me. When I got this beat from them, you know, my eyes lit up then because I'm like, this is me all day. You know, I could talk my shit on it. I could talk my fucking dystopian shit, my futurism shit, my MC popping shit. And it allowed me to do all that on that record and then kind of bring it into a feel that was happening at the time. And, you know, if you put it in context, I think we were Desert Storm or around that area of war shit that was going on. It was feeling kind of, you know, same vibrations that you kind of get now, kind of. And I just put it on the record. Funny thing about that song though is it went up to the offices, like they were really feeling it at the label, and it surprised me because it was, you know, kind of, you know, left, but it went up, and it was meetings about that record. It was rumored that Iveen got to listen to the record and was like, "This record is amazing. I'm a Pharoahe Monch fan. This record's not going to work at black radio." So it got knocked back down to fucking white label.
Yeah, I had my own challenges with that Iveen headed building.
Your debut solo album, Internal Affairs, is absolutely legendary. It was released on Rawkus in '99 and has endured more than 20 years and was finally released in streaming in 2019. But the after story of that album, from Rawkus selling to Geffen and you refusing to record for them to Simon Says leading to a lawsuit, is really connected to a difficult time in your career. How do you feel about that album in retrospect, and what are your favorite memories of the production process?
Oh man, you know, I love the record. When I say record, I mean album. And the process was grueling. It was my first solo album, so I'm learning the process of doing it on my own. So I thought I would, like on some Rocky Balboa shit, just take it back to, you know, home recording, hooked up with Lee Stone, who produced like half of the album and co-produced on the record. And, you know, he had a home studio with a microphone in the closet. and I would ride my bike to his crib every day to work on the album. And I thought that was a good vibe, because even though we were an underground group and organized, we were in Battery Studios with budgets and food budgets and car services. It was kind of like going back to the roots, the straight beginning, to kind of record in the way that me and Lee Stone recorded that record. And I thought it was fitting because I wanted to challenge myself to see if I was really up to the task of being a solo artist. So that process was dope. In terms of, Simon Says, I just felt like what was going on in the context of what was on radio at the time. We had places to break records in New York at the time. So, you really have to put that into context. And I knew that one of the things I wanted to do was see people in the neighborhood and in the club move to records I was making. So, that was important. But it's also important to remember that DJs were breaking records back then in clubs, and we don't have that in New York anymore. So I had that in mind. I was going out a lot. I would see what would move the crowd and what they would respond to. And in the essence of traditional MCs, I wanted to write something that the casual head would say the rhymes. Because I enjoyed, as a fan of hip hop, learning, an LL Cool J verse or a popular verse and performing it in the mirror. So I always wanted a song like that. So the approach to writing Simon Says on the writing side was you got to tell people what the fuck to do and be forward in this chorus. Yeah. But on the verses, I want to kind of write these verses in a way where people could join in, and I could point the mic at the crowd and they can say the rhymes to me, lining up to the lines or to the 4-bar measure of the song. So that was the thought behind writing the record.
That's so brilliant and so interesting that you say that, because I've heard Jay-Z talking about his writing process behind Give It To Me with him and Pharrell. And he was saying how he realized at that time in hip hop that the verse is actually the hook. The verse is what people get excited in hip hop records. The verse is what people get excited about singing along with. So he talked about writing, starting at that point to writing his verse as if the verse was the hook. And that's why you hear him throw in the Carl Thomas, I wish I never met her at all. He's like, it's about to go down. You know what I'm saying? And then these things become hooks, and then somebody samples and loops that, and that becomes a song. It's about to go down. It's, you know what I'm saying? So I appreciate hearing you break that down. I went to a Motley Crue concert once, and I was what writer Greg Tate referred to as a fly boy in the buttermilk. I was the only black person in this amphitheater watching Crue, right? And Tommy Lee, world famous drummer for Motley Crue, starts doing his drum solo. And as he's doing his drum solo, somehow they had it rigged so he's flying through the air. And he's in this contraption drumming, right? And he's drumming upside down. And he's spinning as he's playing the drums. And then the crowd, as if that wasn't enough, he then goes into Simon Says. And the band goes, and they go, dun, 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 dun. And then he starts going into that shit. And I'm just like, wow. Pharoahe Monch made one of the greatest hip-hop songs, not one of the greatest hip-hop songs, greatest songs ever of all time. It's so, so, so iconic. I remember being at Rawkus at the time. The vibe from Company Flow was independent as fuck. Fuck the radio. We don't need radio hit. Fuck all that. We don't need Hot 97, Funkmaster Flex, none of that. And then Definition came out, and Flex was like, I like Definition. He started playing Definition a little bit. But then Busta Rhymes brought Simon Says to Flex, and that became the record of that summer. And then Rawkus Philosophy, and I love you, Jared, but this is what happened. Rawkus Philosophy was like, fuck that independent as fuck shit. We need a radio hit. You know what I'm saying? And so I remember they was like, we gonna spend what we gotta spend on the video. We gonna roll out the whole, we gonna get this radio hit cracking. Tell me about what was going on with you as an artist as you were becoming sort of the radio hit face of Rawkus at that time?
I mean, I wanted that, like, not radio, not to change this, but I wanted to compete with records that I was hearing that were being touted and that were, you know, club bangers. I felt like I could compete with that. I felt like we could compete with it. I felt like not easy in the sense to do, because obviously those records are not easy to do, or else everybody would do them. But I just think in that moment and in that context, I needed to be in the tunnel as well. I needed to be in everybody's car as well. And I was like, you know, I think I could give you that without losing who I am, and also push an agenda forward for myself, to say things in that chorus like, yeah, I said it, you know, rubbing your titties and things like that, to push the bar for me to be able to expand a little bit as an artist. I also learned in that same context from you guys, in most, not to chase that. Like, I've never attempted to do fucking Simon Says 2. Like, it was a thing I did.
Simon Says 2 versus King Kong this time.
Right. Exactly. Like, as an artist, it was, and I think it fit the ride that album took you on. If you go from first song to second song, you know, when I heard the sample, I looped it up. I knew what it was as soon as I looped it up, and I felt, you know, vibes from it. My hair stood up, and I said to myself, you know, maybe going back to Paul C, saying to me, you can only fuck this record up. You know, you need to stay in rhythm, you need to stay in pocket, and you need to tell people what to do. Before you write anything down, you know, because the old MC would have wrote 24 bars before coming up with a chorus. Before you write anything down, let's get this chorus. When you go into your verse, like you said, I want the crowd to say, you know, I want to be able to point the mic at the crowd. I want to see what that shit feels like. So what's the fervor? What's the energy and the personality? You know, I was watching a lot of Italian movies at the time, so that pitch on there is a little high because I'm like, you know, get the fuck up.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like an attitude.
That's crazy.
An attitude on the shit that I was trying to embody for that particular song. Yeah.
I don't remember how old I was when that song came out, but I do remember not knowing what the heck girls are supposed to rub on, because they didn't say obviously titties. And I was like, what? I didn't realize, that's another song that I heard when I was adult. And I was like, oh, rubbing your titties. All right, I got it now.
You know, Snoop and them was out at the time. That's not why I did it, but, you know, I thought that, you know, women could participate outside of the shit feeling misogynistic or just downright disrespectful. It was participatory in the act of the
We're all consenting adults here.
Yeah.
All consenting adults. I went on tour with you when that record was out, Pharaoh. And I seen a lot of titties in the audience. So thank you for bringing titties to the Underground Rap Showcase on the Spicker Couture back in the day.
We love titties here at People's Party, so bring them on.
Speaking of the Rawkus era, you've told me a story about how you came to the bookstore. Inkiru Books, shout out to Inkiru Books. You could go visit Inkiru Books at qualityclub.com nowadays. But back then, Inkiru Books was an actual physical brick and mortar location that Pharaoh told me that he came to. And we had a talk about Rawkus, and you said that I told you about what was going on at Rawkus?
Yeah, you did. You was like, I was talking to you guys about what are y'all doing? Like, you know, who's putting your records out and what have you. And you told me about Rawkus, and you should, you know, bring your music up there and see what it is. It's a pretty good vibe over there, and they got a pretty good air over there. And not only was it a good vibe, but, you know, I like how they were putting out singles at the rate they were putting out singles. I thought that was old school indie, independent, and it was making an impact on the game at the time, because you were getting a lot of quality music from them per year. which felt like old Def Jam shit to me. So I was like,
Yeah.
this feels like the beginning stages of the old Def Jam vibe. You know that there's quality control, and you also know that when you surround yourself with people who are spearheading, it just forces you to be on point. Especially being going into the solo career, I needed to listen to and be around artists who were pushing the envelope, you know?
Yeah, no doubt. You gave props to Lee Stone earlier. Shout out to Lee Stone. But also, you know, you as a producer, I don't think people give you enough props and flowers on your production chops on the song Show No Mercy with MOP. You say, bury me with my SP 1200. And so, you know, that when you say that, you're owning the fact that you're a producer. But most people don't look at Pharoahe as a producer rapper. Why do you think that is?
I was heavy on beats on that first album. Queens and Simon and Behind Closed Doors and
Till the Cops
all the
Come
rest of
Knocking.
it. Yeah, I saw him at Joe's Pub one time, right after the record came out, and he was like, "I like the way you flip that shit."
Okay.
And we had to bust him down with that bag
Yeah, no doubt.
right after that.
No doubt.
So, speak about Maxwell, by the way, that's where the sample comes from. But yeah, I was heavy in the production on that album in terms of the beats and constructing beats and making beats for that album. But as time went on, I still made a couple of beats for Desire and different songs, but I kind of stepped back and did more into a role of a executive producer and like bringing musicians and bringing ideas to the studio.
Okay.
And then formulating them and then making them work that way. So even when, you know, other cats produce, I'm still producing, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just not making beats the same way I did on Internal Affairs.
No doubt. Now, my first tour I ever went on was the Spit Kicker Tour. Shout out to everybody involved in the Spit Kicker Tour. The artists especially. I want to send big love and respect to Biz Markie, first of all, to Common, to High Tech, to De La Soul, the anchors of the Spit Kicker Tour. And I became a man. I went from a boy to a man on that. And absolutely. But I remember you was rolling out a single for The Light, which is an incredible record. At the same time, Common is rolling out a single called The Light, which is one of his biggest hits. And like Simon says, became one of the biggest hip hop songs ever from that era. When you realized that you both had a track with the same title, did it feel like it would be harder for you to get some traction with your single?
I thought that may have been the wrong second single, but I understand why we chose it. Just being around like Hank Shockley, I remember saying like, "Oh, y'all should have stayed dark and aggressive." He felt like my audience was staying there, but I understood why Rawkus might have went with that song. I mean, the Common Joint is just brilliant. One of my favorite hip hop records of all time. So,
Yeah,
and
it's a good one.
I remember at that time we would have these little Spit Kicker meetings
Oh, yeah.
at Burt Padell's office, and
Shout
I
out to
remember
Burt Padell.
Pos was like, "Y'all got to do something about this. You can't fucking have the same song with the same
Pasta
title at the
Noose.
same fucking time."
Because Pasta Noose is the manager. You know, Pasta Noose is the producer and manager. He is the head of the body.
So I thought at that time we would move from that and go on to, you know, other stuff off the album, but I think that could have been a curveball on that project. I'm not sure if we should have went with that song, but I love the record to this day, and people love when I perform it because, again, it's another melodic chorus for me. And I get a lot of a love for my version of that record.
Yeah.
No doubt.
When the Guns Draw from the Desire album featuring Denon Porter is one of the all-time concept songs ever. It's told from the perspective of a bullet and features this absolute fucking great bar. I'm not gonna try and rap it. I'm just gonna say it in spoken word form. "If I'm lodged and your soul's not claimed, I will remind that ass when it's about to rain. What were the specific moments you remember that made you want to write about gun violence? I know you spoke a little bit about that earlier, but could you elaborate some more for us?
All my friends in the hood who've been shot before always complain about the pain they get when it rains because their bones and shit start hurting. So, not that I've never been shot, but that's where that reference is from. But yeah, that comes from the lineage of shit that started with Organized Konfusion with the Stray Bullet record and me trying to continue along that perspective with another song called Damage as well. But with When the Gun Draws, I wanted to look at it from some historical points of as well as who bullets have taken out in terms of, King and Kennedy and things of that nature, and just how heartless or how mindless you would have to be, and you're just an instrument of someone else. And so there is no emotion or feeling to it. So I tried to make the record as cold as possible from that perspective. And I remember being in Dallas and going by the place where the grassy knoll and getting some information and kind of starting to want to put the idea together for that song.
Wow. It's a powerful, powerful song, bro. And working with Dinan is very important. That you have a wonderful working relationship with him. He's such an important musician. I know from working with Dinan, there was a chance of a situation with you getting signed to Shady at one point, something like that. But then if I'm getting the story correctly, the lawsuit behind Simon Says negatively affected that. Is that correct?
Yeah, labels were shifting again in that time frame. Rawkus was shifting to Geffen and wherever was taking over. I was trying to get the fuck out of Dodge, and they were going under. And it was, I was sought after by a couple of people, but I wanted more so than anything to go there because I had some ideas that I thought that they would understand at Shady that were pretty zany. So I was dead set on doing the deal, and I didn't even intend on working with Dinan for that reason, but I got hold of one of his B tapes and was like, this dude is fucking phenomenal. Wound up going to Detroit to record a lot of most of the record, and just phenomenal, amazing artist, singer, rapper, person, one of the most gifted talents in the industry. And so, yeah, I just got caught up in the politics and the shit with all the label attachment and then contractual shit and the sample shit and who owes what and money goes where and blah, blah, blah. And it didn't work out. It's funny, because at a time before that, when I was struggling with that, we were on a PlayStation tour with yourself and Mos, and I was recording had a lot of that music, and Corey Smith was like, it's blasphemous for you to have this music and no one's hearing it. 'Cause I was so fucked up from all the tumultuous bullshit that was happening business-wise. I didn't even know if I wanted to sign to a label again. We were touring. I was doing a lot of that new music on that tour, which was something that I learned from De La too, like see if the crowd is into it. And I started to learn from those tours to write music for audiences and the arrangements for audience. So it was dope to be on that tour. Mila and Showtime, we were like trying a lot of that shit out.
Yeah, it's definitely shout out to Mila and Showtime.
Yeah. And I was disgruntled, man. Like, but I was also on tour. I did a publishing deal, came back, was writing for Puff, and was like, fuck it. And Corey was the one who was like, Nah, it's not godly. You know, this shit is not yours. You're bestowed with these things for a reason to share. And even back then, he was like, just fucking put it out. I'm like, what do you mean just put it out? I'm old school. Like, I need the artwork and the campaign and the this and the posters. Snipes in the city. Even then, he was like,
I need snipes,
give the shit
stickers
away.
and all that.
Yeah. You know, he was like, get the shit away. Like, put it out. You know, you can't hold it. Like, but if you let go and it resonates with people, a lot will come back from that. So when I went back, you know, I thought about what he said and I started shopping it around. And in a time where the deals were starting to change, I was still lucky enough and able to get a little war going on between Sony and Steve Rifkin, SRC, Motown, and I was writing with Puff, and also Puff was like, yo, what are we doing? And I was like, Pharoahe Monch on Bad Boy? That shit just don't sound right, bro. Like, I don't know. Like, he was like, nah, I'm serious. Like, so there were numbers out there, and that shit was a good look. So as the contract dissolved and I was a free agent, you know, it felt good. And I wound up signing that Desire record to SRC with Steve Rifkin.
In Rap God, Eminem shouted you out as the king of underground and talked about being on his Pharoahe Monch grind. Kweli also got a boost from Jay-Z shout out in a similar way in Moment of Clarity. How did you feel getting that sort of love from a rapper who was thought of as one of the best to ever do it?
It's amazing. I mean, for me, every time Eminem drops a project, he pushes the envelope for all MCs because the conversation goes back around lyricism again. And that's always good for me, even without the mention, you know, even when people be like, Pharoahe Monch, you know, the lyricist guys, you know, every time he puts out a project, he does so much in terms of keeping the conversation around lyricism because it's still marginalized, in my opinion. And so for him to shout me out was extra dope because, you know, people check and they go to the references and they see why. And I get to stay in that, you know, in that conversation, not about top necessarily, but lyricism. And that's where I always want to be. So it was dope.
Who told you that about the shout out?
I was in Detroit and, you know, shout out to Denon. He was like, shh, don't say nothing. But Eminem put you in this new song. Shit. I was like, I won't say anything.
Now, I got to give you your props because there's a conversation around mental health that's getting better in Black communities, but a while ago you did the PTSD album and you spoke openly and honestly about your bouts with depression and mental health. Why do you feel like it's important that people, especially people of color, Black people, and in particular Black men, speak honestly and openly about depression and mental health? And have you gotten feedback from people who are going through similar things?
Oh man, that album would have me in tears to like revisit those times to write from that perspective. You know, coming off of the War album with Duck Down, shout out to Duck Down. Guy Route, my manager, was like, you gotta really get back in there and try and put another project out. You take too long to do projects. And I was like, you know, it would just be dope to come back with this record, personal record right after this War record, you know, with the Still Standing and really dig into it and not just use PTSD as some shit that's floating around that people are going through, but really dig into your emotional background, let people see more into who Troy Jameson is and was. So I knew I wasn't experiencing depression at the time of writing the record, so I knew I would have to revisit those times, and it was difficult to do. You know, it's based in me being hospitalized with the asthma and being on so many medications and cocktails of different chemicals that it just threw me out of whack. And when I was released from the hospital, you know, things that I normally would be able to cope with, I was noticing that I wasn't able to process emotionally, and took me to a dark place. Found out about what I was going through randomly by going to a dentist appointment and writing down the medications that I was on a sheet of paper, and the dentist coming out into the lobby, inviting me back into his office space, sitting me down. I'm like, this is weird. Sitting me down at his desk and saying, do you realize that this particular cocktail of medications that you're on, this one in particular, causes severe depression? And I just wanted to speak to you and look at you and actually, do you realize the side effects of the medications you're on? And I fell over and bawled on the desk. And I just, all of these weights were lifted from me just from getting an idea of knowing what was causing my depression.
Wow.
Because I didn't know. And so it just, as much as you are affected by the darkness and the weight, I was also like, why? And I don't understand why this happened all of a sudden. But for me, luckily, it was the medication, and I pulled out and adjusted and got myself back. Realizing that can happen to you, I realized that some people, it may not be that simple. And when I was going through it, I would call people and be like, yo, I'm not feeling correct. In my community, people be like, smoke a blunt, get a beer, fucking suck it up, And I was like, no. And, a couple of real friends were like, yo, this is like, you need to get professional help if you're feeling this way. I can't talk you out of this. I can't talk you back to norm. If you're really feeling this way, you need to get professional help. And that was some years ago. It wasn't present time that I was writing the record, but it just made me feel like how many people may be off kilt and don't even express it. And it's been prevalent in all communities all this time, and something that we're just now becoming equipped and having the language to express and communicate what we're feeling and how to feel with it. I think we're becoming more comfortable. Like my parents and in the Black community, hardworking. I seen my father go to work sick at 5 a.m. in the morning every day. So you're not thinking if you have an issue that you can't see.
That's right.
To go to your parents and be like, I'm not feeling, it's like, what are you talking about, So in that community, I think that the part of the pressure comes from seeing Black parents and Black people grind through so much in our lifetimes. You don't want to talk about something that you can't physically see or to somebody, and it feels like it's a weakness. But I think absolutely we're becoming more adjusted to dealing with mental health as a primary issue.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. So that's such an important point you made that I've never even thought about it on that level. You had mentioned the We Are Renegades album. Fantastic album, a fan favorite. One of the best collaboration songs I've ever heard in my life is Assassins from that album, with Jean Grae and Royce da 5'9", probably two of the only MCs that I would put on your level in terms of like someone I'm looking at like is technically proficient with the bars. You tell me about making that incredible song.
What can you say about Jean? I watched a clip of her doing that live the other day, and I just was blown away. Blown away by, I'm still like extracting, pieces from her verse that I didn't catch. I catch something new still, yeah. But that's what we love about this on the lyricist side. Me and Jean was staying in the same building at the time when I was writing this record. She was really pushing me on this album to reach out to the different artists that I wanted to reach out to, and Idris Elba does the intro to the album. She was like, fucking call him, text him, right? She was really helping me get a lot of shit done with that record. But anyway, she did a verse and I did my verse, and I was on tour with Slaughterhouse, and I asked Royce, and Royce is like, you know, when you get the call from Royce or Thought or Fonte or Kweli, you know you're about to hear all the fucking words and bars, and you're just like, God, I gotta go into my bag.
Right.
So he listened to the song, and he was like, oh, it's one of those, like, all the words, y'all use all the words records, all right. But what blew me away about him is he recorded on tour in a hotel room, again, watching somebody grind in that time. His grind in that Slaughterhouse period was insane, just in terms of work ethic and features and getting shit done. I'm always inspired by being around people like that. He knocked his verse out in a hotel room, and then we created it like, you know, superhero shit. He comes in at the end and he's late and the car crashes and he drops his verse. So that was big for me because like a lot of people, Royce is gold standard, you know.
Yeah, man.
MC.
Yeah. I also want to thank you for participating in the creation and the rolling out of Indy 500. You know, Indy 500 was a conversation that you, me, and Ninth Wonder had, and we ended up doing a record that was sold as me and Ninth Wonder, but you were the catalyst for that, and you were featured on that album, and so I appreciate that. But I brought up
Yeah, man.
One of the things I like about the Assassins record is you refer to 13 on that record. Again, I mentioned 13 earlier. 13 has been a constant reference point throughout your career, and now you have this new project called 13. Marcus Machado and Daru Jones, who Daru Jones is a musician I've worked with extensively. He's one of the best drummers of all time. He learned how to drum really by honing in on them J Dilla beats. He works with Jack White. He set up my band, the Whiskey Boys, would not exist if it wasn't for Daru Jones. He's an incredible musician. This record is a magnificent day for an exorcism. But before we talk about that record, tell me about 13. Why 13 is such an important number in your life?
I contracted asthma at 13 months, and so with my parents always saying he was 13 months old, the shit just was there from the beginning before I can even think about it. And then, you know, I'm a big sports dude. A lot of my favorite players wore the number. And then it's just obviously seen as bad luck. So it's the shit you shouldn't do or shouldn't like.
Right.
And just being a quirky ass fucking weird artist, I'm like, fuck that. That's my favorite number, so I'm gonna stick with it. 13.
Right.
Right, word up.
So I actually went through my own rock star phase where I thought that when I was dressing like what I thought was a rock star. You've dressed like a rock star. You're dressed like a rock star now. And your new band, 13, is very rock influenced. What do you have to say about rock and roll, and how has it affected your vibe, music, and attitude? And what are the rock albums that really forged that connection?
Again, early on, you know what I mean? Like, it's for me, it's nothing new. I think it's dope that you would have to, for me to have to like put people on about Black influence in anything in this country, but especially rock music, as well as hip hop. Like, when I would be at jams, they would be spinning, you know, Billy Squier, Big Beat, or, you know, different records that had these drum breaks, and I would just go look for the drum breaks and find out that a lot of the joints was from rock records with these ill heavy drums that I would love. You know, in terms of hip hop, it infuses, it's the one music that infuses, and you got to have chops in all the records, from rock to soul to disco to reggae. You know, all these cultures help inspire hip hop music. But on the rock side, you know, I noticed with like Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath, it had a soul and a funk and a lot of breaks that I would actually want to rhyme to and loop. And as I studied it more, you know, going into this project, even one of my favorite drummers from Led Zeppelin, John Bonham, I watched the documentary on him to understand more why I like Led Zeppelin so much. And he was saying in the doc that he listened to a lot of Clyde Stubblefield. And the reason Zeppelin sounded a little iller than the rest is the way that he approached his drumming in the pockets, in the feel, was different from what people were doing at that time in terms of rock drumming. It's kind of the catalyst of why I went to Daru Jones, because I wanted someone who could play like a MPC or play like Dilla beats, keep the funk, but also understand how to drive a record forward with rock. And, you know, Daru does it all. And so that's the catalyst right there. I mean, it's not about a look. You know, I think we are that, you know. Kweli is that. Most is a rock star. You know, Company Flow was Company Flow before LP did what he did. Like, I always seen us that way, in terms of us being the magnificent artists of our time. Like, I would look at Stevie and Marvin and all of these people. You know, by the time I got to the Rawkus era, I was like, these are those dudes right now. Like, these are those, we are the people who people are looking at saying, this is some magnificent contributions that you added. So attitude-wise and spirit-wise, I didn't, you know, feel like I needed to try to go there. Musically, I love aggressive, dark hip-hop. I love Mobb Deep. I love M.O.P. You know, those are my favorite, you know, two of my favorite groups. That's the type of hip-hop I gravitate to. If you listen to M.O.P., without them using any guitars, they're already a fucking, you know, rock group, so to speak,
so
because
true.
of the
That's
energy
so
that they bring forward. If you take a listen to Simon Says, and why Dude was playing the shit upside down, it has a temperament to it that makes you feel a certain way about being open and loose and letting go in a certain way. And I always felt that hip hop had that shit anyway, even more so than what was quote unquote being called rock at the time. You know, I was like, our shit is harder than their shit. Like, what's harder than fucking M.O.P.? You know, so, you know, but working on the process of this record, I would just like to add, I was cautioned not to use the term rock because it's taken so many terms throughout so many different generations. And if you think about it now, you know, it's not as dope as it was to me when I was coming up. So it's difficult for me to say, you know, for me to say I'm working on this rock album. I'm careful to who I say it to, with the hope and understanding that I'm not talking about some bullshit label fuckery that's happening with rock music right now that may be corny to the kids, because there was a time when the shit was really flying. It was really dope, from Parliament, Funkadelics and shit like that, you know. So I think it was always there to answer your question.
Yeah, we are renegades. Fuck you, pay me.
Exactly, man.
And you redid "Welcome to the Terror Dome" for Public Enemy, which is that's a hip hop record that feels like rock. You from Queens, like Run DMC. I mean, obviously Run DMC had rock influences and elements with Rick Rubin. Yeah, man, I appreciate the connection that you make. You've also been, this time around, really prominent with the visuals as far as you directing videos for 13. How do you feel about directing videos, and that is filmmaking in that way something you want to get deeper into?
Yeah, man, it goes back to conversations we used to have on the road. I remember one in particular. You were like, our visuals during the golden era didn't always match up to the amazing songs that were being put out. Yeah. You know, you would hear a certain song and then get to the visual, and whether the people who the label hired were lazy or not, you know, just out there enough to kind of match, or whether the artist was like, I just want to fucking stand by some fucking graffiti. Right. It didn't matter. It just didn't meet up. meanwhile, I'm looking at these other genres and they're killing the visuals. And then you have an artist like Busta come through,
Yes.
who paid crazy attention to his visual work.
Yes.
And even him today, you know, is one of my favorite artists. Speaking of M and Bust, they continue to push the envelope on all sides of the spectrums, and it's inspiring as a fan just to watch and listen to, as well as try to bounce off and create from. And so I wanted to take a first hand in visuals this time, because I've had a lot of ideas over the years, and so being independent has allowed me to be hands-on with the directing and the writing and so on and so forth. Especially a project like this, I knew if I was going to try and reinvent or push the sound a little bit, that I would need visuals to help tell the story of the craziness that I was writing, or even push it crazier. Shout out to Tatiana, who directed the fight video with the mask, and we burned the Ku Klux Klan robes at the end of the video. It's even like a story in getting Klan robes made. Like, I just went online and thought, where do you find these shits? But we had to actually, have them shits made. It's a whole crazy story. But,
Wow.
Burning the robes and pyro and having all these people on set during COVID, it was challenging, but it was fun because that was the vision,
Can you tell the story about getting the Klan robes made? I'm kind of interested in that.
So I'm like, what? It's the slow ass video that I wanted to shoot in all slow motion in a world of TikTok, knowing that people have short attention spans. Like, fuck it, I don't care. Go against the grain. I'm gonna give you a big ending for this video that takes a long time to happen. And I'm like, what happens at the end? What does this girl do? What does the band do? So I was like, I know what we do. We fucking burn some fucking Ku Klux Klan robes that somebody put in the middle of the street as a symbol to the people in the neighborhood. Hey, we still here. We're still rocking. If you think we're not, because things are a little quiet, boom, 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 these Klan robes are in the middle of the fucking road. So the girl shows up, Molotov cocktail, she burns the robes. So how do we get robes? My stupid ass goes on Google, and I'm just like, order some Klan robes from
the Klan robe store.
That shit is like, oh, you have to do this and this. And I'm like, okay, this isn't a film. I'm not going to be able to fake all of that and get these Klan robes. So they got to get made and they got to get burned. So I was like, I just can't take sheets. One designer was like, did you know that sheets are designed not to burn after a certain amount of time from house fires? They kind of design the linen not to burn. They have a fabric on them because if there's a fire, they don't burn.
Man, these white supremacists think of everything.
Right. You ain't about to burn my shit.
It started to get pricey. And I'm like, these Klan robes are eating my budget for this fucking video and shit. But we got them made. They're like 12 feet tall. We had to get them made for the shot. And then we had to treat them with a certain chemical so that they would burn properly. And so it was a whole ordeal to get all that shit done. But thankfully, we got it done.
No doubt.
Wow.
Now, speaking of provocative imagery and lyrics and racism, there's a lot of dope songs. You mentioned Fight and Cypress Hill. Shout out to Cypress Hill. Cult 45 is another good one. Scarecrow is a fantastic song. But I want to ask about the lyrics to the song Racist. It's one of the most powerful songs I've heard in recent memory. Thank you for making it. These lyrics are powerful and angry. Most black people try to spend less time in the heads of racists, and you're fully diving into the head of a racist in this song. And not just a racist, but a bigot on many different levels. Was that a hard place to go to?
Yes. Again, you're trying to tap into character, and then not only tap into character for the writing, but tap into the voice and the performance as well, down to, I wanted it to cut through that vocal. It's like at least I don't do a lot of recording for albums. Like I'm not the guy who records 40 songs to choose 15. But for this record, it's like at least 7 versions of the song. It's on funk beats, it's on boom bap beats. But then I wanted to strip it down so you could just really pay attention to what I'm saying. So I found something that was stripped down. Me and Lee worked on this beat for Racist. So you could just basically get a vibe of the record, but more so pay attention to my vocal. And, you know, we've done records like Hate before with Prince Poe and Organized Konfusion. So it wasn't that much of a challenge to go there. But some of the things I had to say, I knew would be offensive because I have dear friends and family in all of these communities, obviously, from the gay and lesbian community to all the different races that I'm disrespecting and saying derogatory things to in the song. So I wondered how it would be received. I would hope that, I know that if it reaches different spaces, but I would hope that my work throughout the years gave me the gravitas to play with a record like that and become this character on the song.
Word.
But I was worried about it making the record, yeah.
Yeah, you said that to me when I ran into you last night. You asked me what I thought about the record. I was like, it's dope, it's dark. You were like, what do you mean? I was like, well, to give you an example, this song Racist. And he was like, well, tell me what it is about this song. Like, did I go too far? Like, you were really interested in my opinion about the song.
We shot something for it. And I'm wondering about that now too, because doing a video for something like that is also a whole different animal in itself. But
I say go for it. I mean,
Yeah,
I think,
me
you know,
too.
you got, you know, Lucas Joyner did something that's similar. Obviously his record wasn't as incendiary as yours, but, you know, he was trying to tell that story and give a different perspective. I think the world could use more of that, more bravery, more artists taking risk.
also the song is so old, I'm sorry, that it's a couple of things I say in there that when I saw one of Dave Chappelle's specials, I was like, you know, I don't even know if I want to do this record anymore because of what he was saying and the way he was getting feedback from it. And I was like, he stole some of the umph of the song, as well as the Joyner record too. I was going to pull it back, but I was like, you know, I put it out. I wrote it some time ago, you know.
And I think the battles that you're referring to with Dave, I think he won those battles when you look at the culture. You know what I'm saying?
Keon Harold, who just went viral because his son was attacked by a crazy ass Karen. And I also saw that woman who accused his son of being a thief gave a half-assed apology. How's their family doing? How are they holding up?
He's good, man. I reached out to him when the incident occurred, and it's trying. You know what I mean? It's not like something you could brush off. You know, those I don't think people get how heavy those incidents are on your family and your son. As a father, you're supposed to protect your son, and both of them, I imagine, are going through it as well, you know. And he's holding up though. You know, Keon is a good friend of mine, as well as we've worked on music together, and he's over the last 3 years taken me around the world with him. So he's just a tremendous friend and musician, and someone I care about very deeply. So when that happened, you know, it was in my bones as well, you know, because you know, those are the things that can linger with you. But the way that the community reached out and people reached out, I think his son and you know, I think they'll be good.
Word up. Well, you know, shout out to Keon. He's such a good dude. Pharoahe, you're such a good dude, and I love and appreciate and respect you so much. You've pushed me and challenged me and inspired me in so many beautiful ways. And before we get out of here, I just want to ask you, what's next? I know we just had a project just dropped just now, but what are you excited about? And what you got next creatively?
we just shot a video for Hate. Because of the nature of the records were written to be performed live, and I was praying that they would translate well live, which is why I wanted to make it a band and not just a Pharoahe Monch record per se. We've been blessed with the opportunities to do a lot of live performances so people could see us, like Tiny Desk and Colbert and Tidal. So there's a lot more live performances on deck for the band, as well as more visuals to come. We did something that's animated that I feel is really, really, really going to be sick. And it took a long time to do it, which is why the project took a long time, because I wanted to wait for these assets. So I'm still heavily focused on this 13 project in the moment. And I feel like this rollout is a marathon and not a sprint. And we're looking at, just pushing it and releasing music. And, it used to be first week, Kweli, this, but now I'm doing this podcast, and people might find out about the record from the podcast. So
Right.
It's definitely a marathon. So I'm just going to keep grinding it out, keep putting out material for this.
Man, I love it. The People's Party welcomes and appreciates Pharoahe Monch. One love. That was wonderful. I loved it.